Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling a topic that's a little unsettling, but incredibly important. We're talking about the changing nature of warfare and how it connects to the rising global unrest we're seeing more and more these days.
It's something we can't ignore.
Definitely not. To help us unpack all of this, we're turning to Andranik Aghazarian's book, Cold War 2.0, Dawn of the Asian Millennium. Specifically, we're focusing on a chapter that really caught our attention. It's all about something called unrestricted warfare.
Yeah, that's a fascinating concept. The book actually suggests that those classic images of battlefields and tanks, well, they're becoming less and less relevant. These days, conflicts are being fought in much less obvious ways, and honestly, the tactics can be even more disruptive than actual bombs and bullets.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep.
Because these tactics can directly affect your daily life.
Absolutely. So this chapter we're diving into is particularly interesting. It was written way back in 1999 by two Chinese colonels, Cao Liang and Wang Jiangsui. And they lay out this idea that we're already in Cold War 2.0, that the battle lines are being drawn in ways we might not even recognize.
And what's remarkable is that they predicted so much of what we're seeing today. They basically argued that the 21st century would see a shift towards this unrestricted warfare, where the old rules of engagement are, well, they're basically thrown out the window. It's all about using this blend of different tactics to achieve political and economic dominance. And they often target the vulnerabilities that come with our increasingly interconnected world.
Okay, so let's break down these tactics. The book highlights four main areas of what it calls offensive action: lawfare, economic warfare, network warfare, and terrorism. And each one of these is designed to exploit weaknesses in the systems that we all rely on every single day.
Exactly. And it's really important to note that these aren't just theoretical tactics. We're seeing them being used right now by various actors on the world stage.
Yeah, for instance, take lawfare. The book defines this as basically weaponizing legal systems and institutions to achieve strategic goals.
It's almost like using the law as a weapon instead of a tank or a missile.
Right. It's a subtle but powerful approach.
And the book even points to using NGOs as proxies to influence policy in other countries. It's like pushing an agenda without resorting to a full-scale military intervention.
Right, so it's like this under-the-radar approach to warfare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have economic warfare. Remember that situation with the UK being pressured to withhold Venezuela's gold?
Oh, yeah?
That's a prime example of how it can be waged. The U.S., with its, I think it's over 30 active sanction programs at this point, that's another example of how economic measures are used to exert pressure and influence globally.
It's kind of sobering to think about how vulnerable our interconnected economies really are.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the impact that sanctions can have on a country's ability to access essential resources or even just participate in global trade.
Yeah, it can be crippling.
And that's often the goal.
It is. The book argues that by weakening a nation economically, you can create internal pressures.
Right.
That could lead to regime change or just political instability.
Then there's network warfare, which feels especially relevant in today's digital age.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about attacks on critical infrastructure, like communication systems, power grids, financial networks. It's like something out of a movie, a cyber thriller.
Oh, absolutely. The book even mentions alleged instances of Russia using jamming technologies against U.S. warships.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there are the constant cyber attacks that we see happening against government agencies and corporations. It's unsettling how vulnerable all of this makes us. The interconnected nature of our world, I mean, we rely so heavily on the internet, our phones, and reliable power grids.
Disrupt any of those, and it has a domino effect.
Yeah, a ripple effect across society.
And of course, we can't forget about the age-old tactic of terrorism, which the book defines as the use of violence and intimidation to achieve political aims. It's a tactic that preys on fear and aims to disrupt the fabric of society.
And even what might seem like small-scale attacks can have a huge psychological impact. Think about it. Increased security measures, heightened anxiety. It erodes trust in institutions.
It's not just about physical damage.
No, it's about the disruption and the fear that spreads throughout society.
So we have these four key areas of unrestricted warfare: lawfare, economic warfare, network warfare, and terrorism. And the book is arguing that they're all being employed right now, globally, to reshape the balance of power. And it's not just nation states playing this game.
That's what's so unsettling. Non-state actors, terrorist groups, even corporations, they're all getting in on this. Using these tactics to gain influence and advantage, it makes for a really complex and unpredictable landscape.
It's like a new kind of battlefield. The lines are blurred, the rules are constantly changing. So this brings us to a big question. What does this all mean for everyday people like you and me? How does unrestricted warfare actually impact our lives?
Well, the most immediate impact, I would say, is this constant underlying sense of unease. It's like the world feels less stable, less predictable with these hidden conflicts playing out all around us.
Like we're living in this perpetual state of low-grade conflict.
Exactly.
You're never quite sure where the next threat is going to come from.
Right. And beyond that general feeling of unease, there are some, yeah. The book draws these really stark parallels between the social and economic factors that led to the decline of the Roman Empire and what we're seeing here in the US today. It's a chilling comparison. Think
Yeah.
about it. Income inequality is rising. You see elites retreating into these fortified enclaves, almost like modern-day Roman villas turned bunkers.
It really paints a picture of a society that's fracturing along economic lines, with the wealthy becoming increasingly isolated from the struggles of everyday people. And that disconnect, that feeling of being left behind, it's a powerful driver of social unrest.
And the thing is, this isn't just happening in the U.S. The book highlights a report by Verisk Maplecroft. They found that almost 40% of all nations experienced some form of civil unrest in 2020. That's double what it was the year before.
100% increase.
Exactly. It suggests that we're witnessing a global wave of discontent fueled by this really complex interplay of factors.
So what are the main drivers?
Well, the report identifies several key themes driving these protests. Income inequality, of course, but also war, inflation, the erosion of civil liberties, and the rise of authoritarianism. It's almost like this perfect storm of social and economic pressures. They build and build until they reach a boiling point, and people feel like they have no other choice but to take to the streets.
Makes sense.
The book also highlights this really chilling example of the human cost of unrest, citing the protests in Chile that were sparked by something as seemingly small as a metro fare hike. Those protests ended up causing billions of dollars in damage.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder that even seemingly small triggers can ignite widespread unrest when the underlying social and economic tensions are already simmering beneath the surface.
It feels like technology and our interconnectedness is playing a role in all of this too, amplifying the unrest.
Oh, absolutely. Mobile phones, social media, VPNs, these tools allow people to organize, spread information, bypass government censorship.
It's a double-edged sword though, right?
It is. Technology can be used for control and resistance.
It's a lot to process: rising global unrest, fueled by inequality, economic instability, this growing sense that the system is rigged against the average person. It's like this powder keg just waiting to explode.
And on top of all of that, we have another layer of complexity to consider: the rise of what the book calls a global political awakening. It uses the insights of Zbigniew Brzezinski, the former U.S. National Security Advisor. He actually wrote about this global political awakening back in 2008.
Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah, he predicted that it would be driven by technology and this desire for greater political dignity, respect, and economic opportunity.
It sounds like he was ahead of his time.
He was. He saw this awakening as this fundamental challenge to the existing global order. He argued that people around the world were becoming more aware of their rights and less willing to just accept the status quo, especially when it came to things like poverty, inequality, and political oppression.
And we're seeing that play out now, all over the world.
We are. He predicted that this awakening would lead to increased turmoil as people demand a greater say in how they are governed and a fair share of the world's resources.
The book examined how this awakening is impacting geopolitics, particularly with the shifting power dynamics that we're seeing. The rise of China and Russia challenging that long-standing dominance of the West is a prime example of that.
Yeah, and the book notes that China has already surpassed the U.S. in trade with Africa. And Russia is consolidating its influence over former Soviet republics. You have all these developing nations looking to these alternative powers for partnership and support because they're disillusioned by what they see as the failures of American hegemony and globalization.
The book even compares American hegemony to a form of legalized colonialism.
Yeah.
It's a bold statement for sure, but it does reflect this deep sense of frustration and anger that so many feel toward the existing global order.
It does. And as these new powers rise, the old order seems to be struggling to adapt.
Yeah.
The book argues that the U.S. in particular has been slow to recognize and respond to these shifts, clinging to these outdated strategies and failing to address the underlying grievances that are fueling this global unrest.
So it's creating a vacuum.
Exactly. A vacuum where conflict and instability can thrive. So here we are with this convergence of unrestricted warfare, rising social unrest, and a shifting global order. It can feel really overwhelming.
It can. To add to this already complex situation, the book brings in another prediction, this time from Deutsche Bank analyst Jim Reed. He calls it the Age of Disorder.
Yeah, Reed argues that we're on the brink of a new era, an era characterized by generational conflict and economic upheaval. He believes that we're at the tail end of the cycle marked by globalization, and we're about to enter this new, unpredictable phase.
And what's driving this transition, according to Reed?
He says it's a growing intergenerational wealth gap and the impact of two major economic crises, the global financial crisis and the pandemic. It's like millennials and Gen Z. They've been dealt a bad hand. They've come of age during a time of such economic uncertainty. They're saddled with student debt. They're facing limited job prospects, struggling with housing costs. It's no wonder there's so much resentment and frustration building up.
Makes sense. So where do we go from here?
Well, Reed predicts that this generational tension will lead to some significant political and economic shifts in the years to come. There will be a push for wealth redistribution, higher taxes, and a shift in economic power as younger generations gain more political influence. It's hard to predict exactly how this will all play out, but one thing is clear. We're heading into a period of immense turbulence and uncertainty.
Wow, we've covered so much ground already.
Yeah.
This whole concept of unrestricted warfare and how it's changing the face of conflict, the rising tide of global unrest and this looming age of disorder, it's a lot to take in.
It is. But it's crucial information for anyone trying to make sense of the forces that are shaping our world today.
We'll delve deeper into all of this in the next part of our deep dive. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's really fascinating how all of these threads that we've been discussing, unrestricted warfare, social unrest, and this generational economic shift, are so deeply intertwined. It's not about like isolated incidents. It's like this massive systemic shift.
Right. It's like watching the tectonic plates shifting, reshaping the global landscape, economically, politically, socially, technologically. It's overwhelming trying to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. And that's where these deep dives become so crucial. By piecing together the insights that we're finding, we can start to make sense of this. It's about connecting the dots.
One of the big takeaways is that we need to move beyond those traditional ways of thinking about conflict and security. We can't just focus on those conventional military threats.
Exactly. We have to recognize that those battle lines are blurring. The tactics are evolving. Warfare itself is changing. We're in this era of unrestricted warfare. Anything can be weaponized. Information technology finance, even the law.
And it's not just nation states. We're seeing non-state actors, terrorist groups, corporations. They're all vying for influence and advantage.
It's a fluid and unpredictable landscape. So how do we prepare for this new era? I think investing in resilience is key, both in terms of infrastructure and society.
So strengthening our power grids against cyber attacks, fortifying our financial systems.
Yeah, and securing those communication networks. But it goes beyond infrastructure.
It does.
It does. We need to build that societal resilience, fostering social cohesion, strengthening our institutions, promoting critical thinking, encouraging media literacy.
So equipping people with the tools to spot fake news, resist manipulation.
Yes, and engage in dialogue across ideological divides.
That's a tall order.
It is, but it's essential. It's about empowering individuals to be more resilient in the face of these challenges.
The source material really emphasizes that.
It does. We also need to address those root causes of unrest.
Like inequality, poverty, lack of opportunity, political disenfranchisement.
Exactly. Invest in education, create opportunities, promote social justice. And on a global level, we need to rethink how we engage with other nations.
Moving away from those models of dominance and exploitation.
Towards ones based on partnership and mutual respect. We have to realize that our security and prosperity are intertwined with that of others. We can't just isolate ourselves.
It's a big shift in thinking.
It is. It requires letting go of old paradigms and embracing new ways of thinking and acting. Remember Jim Reed, the analyst who predicted this age of disorder? He asked, "Are you ready?"
That's a powerful question. It challenges each of us to examine our own assumptions, our preparedness, and our role in shaping the future.
He's basically saying, don't just wait for the storm to hit. Get ready, get informed, get involved, because this age of disorder is coming, and the choices we make today will determine how we navigate it.
And those choices aren't just about survival. It's about the world we want to leave for future generations.
It's a huge responsibility, but an exciting opportunity. Think about it. Times of disruption and change always bring potential for innovation and positive transformation.
We're standing at a crossroads. The path we choose determines the course of history.
And the future isn't predetermined, it's something that we create.
Together.
The source material emphasizes that. It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want. What does that future look like for you?
The answer lies in embracing complexity, seeking out diverse perspectives, engaging in constructive dialogue. It's about going beyond those simplistic solutions, recognizing that these challenges need collaborative systemic approaches.
It's about fostering curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to learn from each other. Our ability to navigate this age of disorder hinges on our capacity to connect, build bridges of understanding, and work together.
That's the key to building a more resilient, just, and sustainable world. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What role will you play in shaping this new era?
It's worth thinking about, because as we've discussed, the future isn't something that just happens to us. We create it together.
We'll be back for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore potential pathways forward and what this all means for our daily lives. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on unrestricted warfare and all the global unrest we're seeing. It's been a lot to absorb.
It has. It really has. But these issues are so important. We have to think critically about this stuff. Grapple with these truths, even if they're hard to face.
Absolutely. So as we wrap things up, I want to shift gears a little. We've been talking big picture geopolitics, systemic challenges. But how does this all play out in our everyday lives? How do we navigate this new reality personally?
That's the question, isn't it? And there's no simple answer. But I think one of the most crucial things we can do is to cultivate a sense of agency.
Okay, so break that down for me. What exactly do you mean by cultivating a sense of agency?
I mean, even with these huge forces at play, we still have the power to choose to act, to shape our own lives. It's about not feeling powerless.
So not just being a passive bystander in this age of disorder.
Exactly. Engage with the challenges. Try to understand them. Figure out how to navigate them in a way that feels right for you.
I like that. So that starts with awareness, right? Staying informed.
Yeah, educating ourselves, seeking out different perspectives, becoming really discerning about the information we consume.
Taking control of our own information diet, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Diversify your sources. Look for independent voices.
Yeah.
Read, widely engage with views that challenge you.
And have those difficult conversations.
Yes, talk to people who see things differently. Really listen. Try to understand their point of view. Be open to learning something new, to having your own perspective changed. Those are such valuable skills in a world that's becoming more and more complex.
Absolutely. So beyond staying informed, what are some actions we can take to really cultivate that sense of agency?
It doesn't always have to be these big, sweeping actions. Sometimes it's about focusing on what you can control in your own life, in your community.
Like building relationships with your neighbors, getting involved in local projects.
Yeah, supporting businesses that you believe in, advocating for policies that create a better world. It's recognizing that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
And those actions can build on each other, right?
They can. And it's also about finding ways to stay grounded amidst all the chaos. Cultivate those practices that help you manage stress, stay connected to your values, and nurture a sense of hope and purpose.
All essential for building resilience.
Yeah.
Both individually and collectively. And that's one of the most powerful things I'm taking away from this deep dive. Resilience isn't just about survival, it's about thriving.
It really is. It's about using these disruptions, these challenges, as opportunities to reimagine the world, to create something better.
Embracing the uncertainty, the ambiguity, the fluidity, and using it to fuel innovation and positive change.
The age of disorder isn't just a threat, it's an invitation.
An invitation to what?
To step into our full potential, to become more conscious, more engaged citizens, to create a future that works for everyone, a future that's more just, equitable, and sustainable.
I love that. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. Don't be afraid to embrace the messiness of it all. Don't shy away from the tough questions, the hard truths, the things that challenge us.
Because in those messy spaces, in those uncomfortable conversations, that's where we find those profound insights, those meaningful connections. That's where real change begins.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this has sparked some new ideas, maybe some challenging questions, and a sense of renewed purpose. We'll see you next time.